What is the role of a sangoma then?
A role of a sangoma is to heal, is to also see what's your problem. You cannot go to a sangoma and say, I've got a problem like this. They must tell you what's your problem. And remember there's a calling, there's isintu, there's isigo. That's different.
Please break them down.
Now, if you have a calling, it means you are called by your forefathers. Now they can speak.
They've chosen
you.
You're the chosen one.
Exactly. Now, isintu, umthetho wabigwa aba forefathers wakho saying, like kids when they're 1 year, we cut their hair. Kids when they are doing this, we make a ceremony for them, and we cut their umbilical cord, we put it somewhere. That's isigo. Exactly. It has
So you're watching a video from Gogo Skhotheni. She was a guest on Podcast and Chill. She's somebody that we've already done a reaction video to. But she says some very interesting things here about African culture, about isigo, about traditions, and also touches a little bit about Christians and why we as Christians are not actually compelled, or we don't have to offer sacrifices when we are embracing our African culture. We don't have to connect with the ancestors. We can still connect with our African culture, and that doesn't necessarily mean we must, observe all the rituals that everybody tends to observe. So let's get into the video.
Nothing to do with your calling.
Got you.
Now, when you start becoming a sangoma, you will not do izinto zasekhaya, which is amasiko wakho.
Yes.
No. Now it's a calling.
Yes.
And you might be called by your grandfather who was not even Shangani, who was not even Tsonga, but was Xhosa. Now, when you want to mix your calling with isinto sasekhaya, that's
two different things.
Got you. That's why ekhaya bazothi, but so we don't have anyone who has a calling at home. Yes, because akusisinto. It's a calling. And you get people who say, but at home we are Christians. Yes, I'm the chosen one.
Yes. You are just mere mortals.
Exactly. A gift is something that you become chosen to do. It's like you are sent to do something by your forefathers. They want to communicate with you. They want to talk to you. And now we've got this trend.
So I just want to state that I don't entirely agree with what she's saying in terms of you can be a Christian and then be called by your forefathers. I think for me, primarily because the calling of Isangoma, it doesn't show any indication or signs that these are your forefathers. I think the violent nature of it, the fact that you're forced into it, a lot of people don't actually choose to be Isangoma. It's not a profession that they put up their hand and say, I want to become Isangoma. And I think from people that I've spoken to, from stories that I've heard, a lot of people actually try and run away from this sort of calling. But certain things will happen in your life that will give you no choice but to actually accept that calling. So for me, it's not something that people choose naturally, but some of them don't see a way out. And so they feel like if I'm sick or these things are happening to me, then I have to sort of bend to this thing. For me, this can never be anything related to my ancestors, my forefathers. They would never force me into doing something like this that I, do not want to do. So I don't agree with her in that regard, but let's continue.
You see sangomas wearing, amapai, the cloths that they wear.
Yes.
And we don't even own any of those cloths. They're done by Indians. We don't even own them. We don't even know what it means. We don't even know the history. You dream of something today, already there's a cloth like that is being sold at Marabastad. And then you're gonna lie and say you dreamed of it. You didn't even dream about it.
What are the other ones? So you're saying calling?
Isigo. Nesinto.
Isinto,
it's the tradition part of it. That's why Abantu, when they see Christians celebrating tradition, Heritage Day, they're like, why? Because they're Christians. No, they're not celebrating the Sinto part. They're celebrating who they are. So it's that. So it becomes something like when you are a Christian, people think you can't do lobola, you can't do. That has nothing to do. There's nothing. It's Isinto. A Christian can do Isinto Sasakai. Because it has nothing to do no umthetho. Isinto, it's basically umthetho sasekhaya. You can start your own sinto when you've got your own family, when you've got your own kids. Uthi mina lagam, this is what we do.
With the ring.
Yeah. We smoke weed. Yeah. Isinto sasekhaya. So with this thing, yes, Angoma, they become so defensive.
So I want to leave it there for today, guys. But I think some very important things for us as Christians who maybe in the past, everything that's been African has generally been demonized. And I think this is important for all of us to sort of understand that African culture is not demonic. So you can't just say, I need to reject my culture in order for me to embrace Christ and Christianity and so on. I think that it's possible for you to embrace your African culture, to be, if you are Zulu, to embrace your Zulu culture, embrace your language, embrace the way that Zulu people dress, and even cultural customs, like Gogo Skhotheni is saying. I can go and pay lobola because, well, it's within my culture. And there are some valuable things even in paying lobola, although I think that in modern times it has been distorted. But I think back in the days, you know, it was a good thing. You know, if my family was able to say thank you for raising your daughter so that my son could marry your daughter, we appreciate you. And as a gesture of creating friendship and all those sort of things, I see the value in doing that. But also even for a man to work hard so that he can prove that he is ready to get married, lobola would be one of those things. So those are things that I believe, can redeem things like a circumcision. I think there are ways that we can do circumcision in a way that's God glorifying. In fact, I would recommend circumcision for almost all the cultures, you know, for a point in the life of a young boy to say, you're now a man. You're no longer a boy. We're no longer going to treat you like a boy. We have trained you, we have taught you, we've set standards for you. And so therefore you can go and sort of begin this new journey as a man. So I think there are valuable things in our cultures that we can embrace. And I think in the past, we've actually generally said everything that's African must be set aside for me to be Christian. That's not necessarily true. But I think equally it's important when we're embracing our culture to not do anything that brings down the status of Jesus in our lives. And Paul says in Romans chapter 12, and he says, do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be renewed by the transforming of your mind. And then he goes on to say that you will be able to then test the good and pleasing will of the Lord. And I think that that's very important, because a lot of the times we live in a time where people want to conform to what is happening on social media, the trends that are happening on social media. If it's fashionable to be a Sangoma, I want to become a Sangoma, even though I'm a Christian. If it's fashionable for you to slaughter and offer sacrifices to the ancestors, you do that. And you try and create space within your Christian faith in order to embrace all those practices which actually go against the law of the Lord, where we bow down, where we conform to what the world is doing. And I'm reminded of the story of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those guys were in a foreign land where a foreign deity was being worshipped. Nebuchadnezzar put a statue and said everybody must bow down to it. And they had respect for the king. They had respect for Babylon. They were working in Babylon. They were seeking the prosperity of Babylon. But they did not bow down to the statue that was made by Nebuchadnezzar. And I think this is something that we as Christians need to do. Embrace the culture. Seek the prosperity of your people. Man, build your people. Seek, valuable philosophies like Ubuntu. Embrace those things that make us African. But don't bow down. Don't worship any idols. And I think this is important for us to engage the culture, is to not distance ourselves from who God made us to be. We've got to embrace all those sort of things. And the Bible says in Colossians chapter 3, it tells us that whatever we do, whether we eat or drink, whether it's in word or deed, we must do it for the glory of God. And so for me, we need to be able to discern what is God's will. What does God want me to do in every situation that I find myself? We live with people in our families who believe in these practices. How do I be a part of the family and go to imicimbi and functions without actually participating in the rituals, but actually the cultural things I can still embrace? I can still embrace my family. I can see myself as one of them. But when it comes down to worshiping anything that's other than the God of the Bible, then it's where we need to actually put our foot down and say, actually, we will not bow down. We will not conform, but we will stand on what God says and what he says in his word. This is Bisrat for Africa, a channel dedicated to giving you Christian commentary on religious and spiritual matters. We'll see you guys on the next video.